you intimacy for a limited time so you can give yourselves more completely to prayer. Afterward, you should come together again so that Satan won't be able to tempt you because of your lack of self-control. I say this as a concession, not as a command, but I wish everyone were single just as I am. Yet, each person has a special gift from God of one kind or another. So I say to those who aren't married and to widows, it is better to stay unmarried just as I am. But if they can't control themselves, they should go ahead and marry. It's better to marry than to burn in lust. But for those who are married, I have a command that comes not from me, but from the Lord. A wife must not leave her husband, but but if she does leave him, let her remain single or else be reconciled with him. And the husband must not leave his wife. Now I will speak to you the rest of you. Now I will speak to you the rest of you. Though I do not have a direct command from the Lord, if a fellow believer has a wife who is not a believer and is willing to continue living with him, he must not leave her. And if a believing woman has a husband who is not a believer and is willing to continue living with her, she must not leave him. For the believing wife brings holiness to her marriage, and the believing husband brings holiness to his marriage. Otherwise, your children would not be holy and not but now they are holy.
Praise the Lord. Thank you and God bless you. Well, where we just read was mostly for the married. Talking about relationship between the husband and the wife. But here we are not just talking about sexual relationship between husband and wife. We are talking about different scenarios that can cause gap in a relationship or in a marriage. Our introduction lesson says, God is the author of marriage, according to Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Can somebody open to Genesis chapter 2, verse 24? While I read the lesson, it says, he designed it to bring glory to his name and also for men to enjoy. However, many marriages today are not conforming to the will of God. Rather than bringing pleasure, many marriages are full of pain and tales of woe because of human choices made contrary to the biblical prints. In this lesson, we shall unravel some of the gaps prevalent in some marriages leading to unfaithfulness among couples. Can somebody read Genesis chapter 2, verse 24 quickly for us? Genesis chapter 2, verse 24.
Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh.
Praise the Lord. He said they shall be one flesh. That is the purpose of God, for them to be united in purpose. So therefore, the gap, we are looking at what will cause a gap between this man and his wife that God designed to be together, to be one flesh. If you are in one flesh, that means you shouldn't have a gap. But here we're seeing a lot of gaps in marriages. So that is what we're looking at. The first outline that we're going to be looking at today is forms of marital gaps. So we're going to be looking at different forms of marital gaps. There are over 6 or 7 of them that is mentioned here. The forms of marital gaps. Why are there gaps in marriages? So that's what we are looking at. As Christians, we are trying to make sure that our marriages are in the way that God wants it, to bring glory to his name. So we are looking at the first one, form of marital gap, is a locational gap, long period of absence, whether traveling for work or serving in the military. This greatly reduces the opportunity couples have to properly bond. Examples are in the Potiphars in Genesis chapter 39, 5 to 7, and the Uriahs, 2 Samuel chapter 11. I will encourage us to read it when we get home. It's a long distance. It is the story in 2 Samuel chapter 11 is the story about Uriah, who was a military general for David. And, he was in a long war. Just like, Ukraine and Russia is fighting right now. It's been almost 2 years, getting to 2 years. This war has been going on. There are some people who are in the battlefront. And for those many years or a year or so, or 6 months, like U.S. military people that are deployed abroad, some of them stay 8 months without seeing their family. We've seen, I don't know if you guys have seen videos of a spouse coming back, surprising the family or the wife or the husband. It can, sometimes it's emotional. Some of them don't even know that when they're coming for Christmas or whatever. Then they'll surprise their parents, surprise their wife or their husbands, And you look at it, oh, this person has been gone. This is somebody who's supposed to be physically bonding for like almost every day. Now this person has been gone for months. These are some of the gaps that are created. Some people go for work. I know somebody who works in a different state. His family lives in a different state. So how do you bond? When you really need somebody to be there for you, how do you bond? These are one of the gaps that affect marriages these days. So Uriah in 2 Samuel 11 was out in war while his wife was taking a birth. David stayed home. And before we know it, the Bible talking about David seeing the woman taking a bath. And he lusted after her and went for her. And before we know it, there was adultery. A child was born. David was trying to cover up this problem, this shame. And he had Uriah killed. Because he said, remember our memory verse said, neither give room for the devil or to the devil. That means there was a room. And sometimes this gap is genuine reason. Like we have Nigerians or people who leave Nigeria to go and study, do their masters in UK, in the US. And their family, their wives or their children, their wives and children are in Nigeria. Or their husband and children are in Nigeria. It affects a lot of things. So that is one of the gaps. That is one of the reasons the devil come and destroy families, relationships, marriages these days. Another gap that we're looking at here is emotional gap. Emotional gap. It's the feeling of insecurity and loneliness, whether emotional, physical, or sexual, can create a gap between couples. The search for excitement to escape boredom and experiment with new things like adapting to new hobbies or hanging out with new friends can affect the relationship between spouses. There are some husband and wife that you see that emotionally they are not connected. If there is no feeling. Sometimes maybe this started even, for me I feel like it's when the marriage is for a different purpose, interior purpose, when there is a hidden agenda in the relationship in the first place. Or maybe he's wealthy, maybe he's doing well, I'm marrying him for the money. Emotional, and sometimes too, it can start very well. And then along the line, they are not connecting emotionally. And for emotional gap, a lot of things can lead to it. It could be communication. It could be actions, or it could be that the person is a liar, not trustworthy, not doing their part to make it work. Before you know it, there is a gap. And these are very, very important issues, especially for those who are married. Sometimes you need to sit back and rethink what is really going on in my marriage. And for those who are not married, it is important for us to look at these things critically before we say yes to someone, to a man or to a woman. Emotional gap is very, very important. You say, poor, poor boundaries in relationships. Poor boundaries is another thing that can cause a gap. Boundaries. I don't remember there was a time we talked about boundaries in relationship in Sunday school here. You know, some of the boundaries, for instance, okay, before I say what I want to say, he said poor boundary, poor personal boundaries or the limits we place on other people as to what we find acceptable or unacceptable can also result in marital gap. Poor boundary, why this one is very critical, like when we talked about boundaries in marriages here some time ago, is that you see maybe a wife or a husband, they don't have boundaries, a limit to what they do with others, maybe an opposite sex, maybe at work. There's always this particular person, or you're always chatting with this person, talking with this person, texting this person. There's no limit. And you even in church, oh, you have somebody is your prayer partner, but it's not your spouse, and there's opposite sex, and you're always in talk with that person. There's no limit to it. You know what we expose people to, what we tell people about our spouse, maybe how bad their spouse is, their character wise, and the person is trying to be the best person. There should be a limit. You know, when we are dealing with others, especially when you are married, as a married woman and as a married man. You see, poor boundaries and personal boundaries, it is a very deal breaker in a relationship. And especially when your spouse start noticing it. When you are talking with someone and your spouse, maybe every day and night, the person called no limit. There's some people that get calls or text messages late at night from somebody you are not that is opposite sex or that is not related to you in kind of way, you know. And then you know that your spouse is not happy with it, and you keep doing it. Those are things that can cause a lot of gap. You know, another one here mentioned, he said revenge, the desire to pay back the wrong done on a partner in the same coin can result in marital gap. I don't know how we can, I don't know, I'm trying to find the best way to explain this. I saw somebody explaining this one time. He said, for instance, you have a car that you drive, your own car, your spouse drives your car, and your spouse now maybe use your car and bring it back home with no gas in it. You are not happy. And then you purposely also take their own car and drive it, and you know that you're supposed to put a gas in it. And then you don't put a gas in their car just to pay back. So that the person, maybe the person is rushing to work in the morning and saw there's no gas. You just say, I want to show you what you did to me the other time. that is very wrong. That's one example. There are other examples also. And we keep just to pay back. You know, I want to show you, you know, what you did to me. I remember a story about this is not sparse now. This story, they say it happened. The former Nigerian president, Rccg Rehoboth, he bought a car long time ago, and his first son, somehow a brand new car, his first son took his car and then had an accident with it. This happened over maybe 40 years or 20 years after. The son now bought his first car and came to show his dad. And then the dad said, oh, yeah, let me drive it. And then he took the car and purposely wrecked it. Just to, just to pay his son back for what he did to him over 20 years ago. That is unforgiveness. That's unforgiveness. But it happens in the marriages, in relationships. We're trying to find out, we're giving examples of gaps, why marriages does not work, or things that could go wrong in marriages. And remember, our remembering verse is Ephesians chapter 4, verse 27. It says, neither give room to the devil. So we are trying to explore ways that we can shut the devil off our marriages. Because a marriage that is united is a strong bond that the devil cannot go into. So why I'm saying this, let us, for those who are married, think back, refresh your memory about what are the gaps in my own marriage that I can start working on right now that will make it a better marriage, so that the devil does not come in, so that we don't lose faith in tomorrow. Another one here that is mentioned is financial gap. So when the financial orientation of the couple differ and both partners fail to reach a compromise as to how money should be managed, there is bound to be conflict which may negatively affect the union. I was reading something there one time. It said the statistics of failed marriages. The cause of failed marriage, especially in America, is not really sexual infidelity. Most are because of financial problems, bills, how how we manage our money as husband and wife. There are some orientation marriages that people they believe that the man had to pay all the bills, but the woman works and then her own money does not go to bills. Mama says it's impossible, but it happens. There are people that's how it works for them. You know. Yeah. Okay. This one I think I read. This was last 2 days ago. I saw somebody was reading it on social media about a guy that wrote into a program. The guy was talking, and they said the marriage crashed. This is a high school sweetheart, but they got married, went to college, got the good jobs, and then got married, had a child. When they had this child, the woman thought that she can be a sit-at-home wife, and then she doesn't want to work anymore, so that she can take care of the kids. But they have a lot of bills. So the man said this is not going to work for them. They talked over it and over it. The woman, even without the husband's consent, resigned her job and became a sit-at-home. So which now put a lot of financial burden on the man. And the man started working double hours just to cover the bills. Now he didn't even have time to see to bond with his child. That caused a rift that at the end of the day, the man filed for a divorce. That was not sexual infidelity. That was money problem. Taking decision financially without consulting your partner or without both of you are coming to an agreement. Those are the things that can affect marriages. It is very important that we know that. Then the last, another one here before, this is the third to the last. I hope we'll be able to cover this at the end. It says a physical or physiological gap. So these are also situations where a couple do not pay attention to each other or do not live like a normal couple, go out together or have a passionate relationship. Eventually, one or both of them look outside their relationship for someone whom they want to be with. I was asking my wife this when we were driving. I said, "What do you understand by physiological?" And I think I want to throw out that question here. Can somebody tell me what you understand by physiological gap? Because I think it's kind of a little bit broad. Can you somebody say something? I would like to hear before I conclude on my own. What do we understand by physiological gap? Go ahead. Are you looking for dictionary?
No, so I'm deciding whether to just, from like, for example, anatomy and physiology.
Okay.
Anatomy is usually physical, and then the physiology is a function.
Okay.
So that means gap due to maybe one person not playing their roles. So gap due to roles not being played rightly. For example, maybe the man is not playing his role well as a husband, as the head of the home, or a wife not playing her role well as the wife. So that is a functional gap.
Okay. We have another gap here that says sexual gap. I think I kind of skipped that one. I'm going to go back to it. Okay. Is any other person have answer to physiological gap. It says physical or physiological gap. This one is grammar, English. Baby, can you say something?
That prevents them from being able to meet their partner's needs.
Okay. Well, that is part of it too. Someone else? I'm looking at Pastor Foley's wife. Do you have anything to say? It's good to see you today anyway. Um, yeah. Okay. Okay, let me leave you for now. So, any other person have something to say? Okay. For me, I think both answers are correct. But I think it goes more beyond that. Physiological gap, physical gap. I think it's more like age gap is part of that physiological. You know, health wise. You know, your body some people wake up, some men wake up, maybe the wife have gained weight, you know, it becomes a problem. Physical appearance, attraction. Like example they mentioned here, he said that they don't do things as couples anymore. There are some people that are not, I don't want to use the word ashamed, but they can hardly go out with their wives. You know, they are not comfortable, you know, um, showing out or bringing their wives to functions where they go to. You know, appearance, physical appearance. I think that's what they are talking about here. You know, it's more here. You know, and then also it also transcend to the attitude because of that physical change. Like my wife said, you know, even like when the man or the woman is not functioning, you know, even like maybe their body organs are not functioning anymore due to medical conditions, you know, it becomes a problem. I was listening to someone, a woman, say that she filed for a divorce because the husband had a cancer. And because of that, the bill, and the man was the breadwinner of the family. So the bills were not being paid. The money was not forthcoming. You know, while the man was battling for his health, she filed for a divorce. Yeah, it happens. You know, so imagine that kind of scenario. So those, I think the totality of it is what I understand by physiological or physical gap. Then like the one I said I omitted is sexual gap. You know, he said many partners in marital relationships are not enjoying sex or getting satisfaction sexually. They are only enduring and coping because their spouses are not sensitive to their sexual needs, regardless of the gender. Having an uninteresting sex life could put your relationship at risk of infidelity. And for the married people, you know, this is very, very important. This is very, very important. Maybe this is not the best place to really go into details. But this is something that you have to look into. Let's hold it here. You know, we have a lot of kids here. I wanted to say stuff, but okay. Another one that we have here is communication gap. Communication is one of the most fundamental components of successful relationship. Even when we talk about the physical gap or sexual, you know, revenging or emotional, all of them most times have a root in communication. Effective communication is not just in marriage, even at work. At work can be a big deal. He said, if you cannot talk to your spouse and listen to what he or she has to say, you will have a hard time making it through the difficult hurdles in your marriage. Not being able to share secrets, stories, and feelings with your spouses can lead some people to open up to other emotionally. Because even communication also has a part in emotional feeling that you have. It's very, very important. And you know, one thing that this thing we're talking about is for us to reflect. You know, and there's something that happened at work this week that was so bad. You know, somebody made a comment, and I saw that it's true. He said, "Listen, you know, over communication is even way better than under communication, low communication. That I'm going to this, even for where you're going to, where when you get there, how you get there. You know, even talking through it is very, very important. It can make a marriage last long. So it's very important we look back at all these things and re-examine it in our marriages. Communication. Even some people go into business without their partner knowing. Some people go into stuff, you know, with other people. You know, if somebody outside knows you more than your spouse knows you, that is very wrong. You know, where you start keeping secrets, don't tell what is going on, you know, in your life or with your partner, knowing so that you guys build together is very, very wrong. Those things, it causes mistrust, you know, and when mistrust happens, people start assuming, and when the communication is not going on very well, you know, the other person will assume, and sometimes the assumption is wrong, and that will lead to a lot of problems. But the last but not the least I will have here is that excess use. This one is very important. It's the excess use of internet and social media, connecting with other people and talking or chatting with them for hours at length at home, work, or even in some public spaces at the expense of your spouse can extend the gap in your relationship. This one is a new generation problem. Social media have been a blessing to us, has also been a curse, a nightmare. No, and this one is not just about spouse, even parents to children, children to parents, wife to husband, husband to wife. Social media, we are so engrossed in social media these days. You know, our children are being taught by social media. You know, I was listening to a documentary about children and iPad, even young children. He said any child from the age of 13 down that were born in the iPad generation, you know, how if you take away iPad from them, it's like you have stabbed them in the chest. Even in churches, and parents use it as an escape. It becomes a drug. The drug they give their children. You know, when the child is having tantrum, yeah, take, so that they will get away from the bothering you. The same thing with parents. It's important that we regulate ourselves with social media. We have more interaction with people that we don't even know, we've long seen, than we're having with our husbands and wives. These are the problems that we have in our generation now. So we're talking about, remember, the topic is gap in marriages, you know, and our memory verse is, don't give the devil, neither give room or space to the devil. If we really want our marriages to work, these are things we should go back to. The first one is a gap in terms of location, distance, you know, emotional gap, poor boundaries. Like we're talking about social media, people if that is far away knows you more. You're texting and chatting with them, you know, more than you know. You don't set boundaries, you know, limit to some of these things than the people who are in your immediate home. You know. Second is revenge. Like I give example, you use your spouse car and you didn't put gas. The other one say I will pay you back, and then drive your car sometimes on purpose, and then don't put gas in it. And when you really need to go out right now, there's no gas in it. You know? And then we say sexual gap. You know, sex in the marriage is very important. It's very, very important. If sex scientifically can reduce stress in your body. So if imagine if you are all day working and you're stressed, frustrated life, that may be the medicine for you to go to bed. Maybe this is not the best place to talk about it. Okay. For the married. Okay. Financial gap is another one that we talked about. Some hide their finances from their spouse. You know, they don't have that trust. You know, one person is laboring and the other person is holding their money. Those are not good. You know, physical as physiological gap, age gap, and physiological